there, gentle viewers, and welcome back to another episode of Common Misconception Debunking Friday! Up first, number 9. Einstein did not fail math in school. This is just silly. When he was shown the column that said that this was a fact, he replied with, "I never failed in mathematics. Before I was 15, I had mastered differential and integral calculus. Things I don't understand." What Einstein did fail was his entrance exam into the Federal Polytechnic School in 1895. However, at that point, he was 2 years younger than his fellow students. Misconception number R. MSG, or monosodium glutamate, has long been an evil in food cooking stuffs. Because that's what we like to do in marketing, man. If you say you have a product that doesn't have any MSG, people are just gonna go crazy and be like, "Oh, it doesn't have MSG, so that must mean MSG is bad for us." Well, it's long been claimed to aggravate migraines, making the pain worse. However, there is no consistent data that proves this point. And even when tested in placebo-controlled trials, it still was not proven that even the small percentage of people that claim to be sensitive to MSG are actually sensitive to MSG. So go out and get yourself some MSG and put some nice flavors in your tongues. Next up is misconception number 3. So you know how when you are talking to somebody and you say a word and it makes sense to you and they say that you're wrong, that that isn't a word, or when you're typing on the internet or in a word processor and all of a sudden that red squiggly line shows up and says it's not a word and you look in the dictionary and there's nothing in there? Well, it's all a lie. There are so many words that we don't think are real words because they just happen not to show up in the dictionary that we look in at that point in time. Have you ever wondered how words become words in the first place? Well, people just start using them a lot. So words like funnest, conversate, or irregardless may show up in some dictionaries, but not others. If you think about how jumbled and messed up a language English is, borrowing from so many different languages, you can understand how a dictionary wouldn't want to put all the conjugations into a dictionary because that would be enormous, ginormous. See, I made up a word there, book. And the thing is because we base our grammar on a couple different languages grammar, there's a lot of conjugations that can happen that aren't necessarily often heard, but are correct. On to misconception number 9. 420 did not originate in the LA Police or Penal Code. In the Police Code, 420 means a juvenile disturbance, whereas the California Penal Code Section 420 prohibits the obstruction of access to public land. The original use of 420 in terms of marijuana use comes from the San Rafael High School. In 1971, a group of students would, at 4:20 p.m., every day probably, go sit beneath a statue of Louis Pasteur and smoke a joint. And lastly, number 5. Bats are not blind. Say it with me. Bats are not blind! Although most bat species do use echolocation as a navigation system, they can all see. They all have eyes and they all see fine. What's even better is that some bats don't even use echolocation at nighttime. They just have really awesome night vision. So guys, thank you for joining me once again here on Common Misconception Debunking Friday! And I will see you next Friday.